Hey everybody, coming at you from my gear room, or as what a lot of people refer to, my basement. Now, it's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and that's like 37.7 Celsius. So it's miserable outside with like 58% humidity. It's terrible out there. So I thought it's a good time to make a sit down and let's talk video. Now, this is about survival, not bushcraft camping, but survival, wilderness survival. And I've never heard anyone talk about the 5 H's of survival. So I'm going to dip into that and talk about it and explain it. And this is going to be something that I'm going to talk about to kind of open your eyes to, so that you can figure out these terms and what they are and learn from them and keep them in the back of your mind. And you can even give yourself some more research on this, because I can't cover all the eventualities of what the 5 H's of survival are. And like I said, nobody talks about them, so I'm throwing them out there for you to learn about them, study about them, keep them in the back of your mind, and hold on to these ideas. And there's a lot of research and study that's going to come right along with this. So let's dip right into it. To start out with, everybody knows the 5 C's of survival. Now, the 5 C's of survival are pretty much equipment, gear, devices. All right. There is the first C, cutting tool. All right. The second one, combustion device, for like fire. Container, whether it's like some sort of a thermos or a water vessel or a pot or a pan or something to boil water in. Cordage, whether it's like rope or paracord or some kind of lashing device. And then cover, whether it's some sort of a tarp or some sort of a poncho or something. So the 5 C's of survival are devices. Now what we're going to go over is how your body reacts and the things that happens to your body in a survival situation. And those are the 5 H's. The 5 H's of survival are hypothermia, hyperthermia, hydration, hyponatremia, and hypothalamus. And there's actually a 6th one that kind of sort of relates, but I'm not going to get into it. And I may mention it at the end of the video if I feel like it's worthwhile. But what these are is these are the conditions that your body will experience, and how nature, hunger, lack of sleep, lack of hydration, in a survival situation, a non-camping, non-hiking, non-bushcrafting situation, these are the things that are going to happen and occur to your body. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of go through them real quick, toss out a few scenarios. You'll have to do a lot of studying on this, above and beyond what I'm saying, because there's just so much that you can get into the medical side of these things. And the simple fact that with these processes, it's all built into survival kits. And I've got a mountain of survival gear over there that I thought about putting in this video, but I think it'll make the video too long. I think the next video will be dedicated directly towards mini survival kits, because when you think about these situations and gear and how you wind up in a survival situation, it's so the opposite of camping, hiking, backpacking, and bushcrafting. And I'm going to kind of touch on that too. Now I'd like for you to think about something for a minute. What is a survival situation? All right, and this is going to kind of get you to thinking in the lines of studying up on some of these terms. Let's say, in my opinion, a survival situation is a sudden, unplanned, unexpected event. Okay? Now, if you think along those terms, you'll separate survival from everything else. Unexpected, unplanned. If you're backpacking, if you're hiking, if you're camping, if you're even out bushcrafting, if you're for a day hike, you're usually going to have some equipment with you. You're usually going to have a backpack with you, a backpack full of gear. And most of the time that's not really a survival situation. And the problem is when you get into these situations with survival gear, if you got a whole backpack full of stuff, you're prepared. And a lot of times when you get into these situations, you don't have anything. And problems with survival kits, when you're not camping, backpacking, hiking, is the fact that a survival kit can get so big that you don't want to carry it. And yet it's got to be small enough that you can carry it but remain effective. So, with that out of the way, those are some more thoughts for you to ponder. So, let's start out with the first one, hypothermia. Now, I know you've heard of this first term, hypothermia. You need to put some thought into it, especially if you're in an area where it's cold or wet or snowing or raining, or you didn't have the proper clothing. That's a biggie there, not having the proper clothing. Now, what hypothermia is where your body loses heat faster than it can produce it. Now, your normal body temperature is, I think, 98.6, and hypothermia occurs when your body drops below, I think, either 295 Fahrenheit or below. So, now symptoms, I didn't have them all written. I didn't want to leave any out, so I wrote them down. You start shivering. You get slurred speech. Can't hardly talk. You lose dexterity. You get to where you can't move around as much. Clumsiness. You're falling down, staggering around. You got a real weak pulse. Your blood's getting thicker. It's not moving as fast. Lack of coordination. Memory loss. Memory loss can really get you in a survival situation. I had my folding saw a minute ago. I don't know where I put it. Where'd I put it? See, memory loss. That's not good. Dizziness. That's not good. You can fall down. What if you hit your head on a rock? What if you fall into a cold lake? You'll be dead. What if you fall off a cliff? Redness of the skin. Loss of consciousness. That's really bad. That's how people freeze to death. All right? And some of the causes, cold water and cold weather, cold air, snow, rain, lack of clothing, lack of shelter. You get lost somewhere. And time exposure, too, matters. Because you might think to yourself, oh, I can't get hypothermia. The water's 82 degrees. It's summertime. Well, let's say that you're in that 82 degree water for hours and hours and hours, and it's completely saturated your body. So hypothermia it's not good, and there's ways of combating it. And my first and foremost thing is, anytime when there's cool weather or cold weather out there, wear the proper clothing or carry the proper clothing. Now, I know it's ridiculous that you can't be expected to always have like a wool blanket or some sort of a modern synthetic blanket, even though this thing will pack down to a small size. The idea behind this is it's like I said, it's a survival type situation. You don't have a backpack full of gear. Maybe you hike away from the day camp. Maybe you've hiked away from the truck to look for a fishing spot. Oh, I'll just be gone for a minute. Well, it just takes a few seconds to get turned around, and you don't have gear with you. So anytime it's going to be cold, rainy, or wet, bring proper clothing, bring a jacket, bring a poncho, whatever. If you have to, tie a blanket around your waist. If you think to yourself, oh, I'm not going to wear a jacket because I'll be hot hiking, tie it around your waist. Carry it with you. Be thinking about these things. Think about these situations. And always keep things in your mind for shelter. Can I get under that tree? Is that tree dry? Pay attention to where the evergreens are. You can sit under an evergreen. Where's the caves at? Any kind of shelter. What's going to block the wind? Hypothermia. Look it up, study more, see what it can do to your body. Okay? Number 2, hyperthermia. Hypo is low, hyper is elevated. Hyperthermia is when your body creates more heat than it can lose. And like I said, your normal body temperature is 98.6, And this usually occurs above 104 Fahrenheit or 40 Celsius. And that's when you're and I believe above 103 is when your brain starts to really lose its train of thought. So 104 is really bad, and then maybe 1 degree above that, 1 or 2 degrees, your brain actually starts to boil and can cause permanent damage. So this is caused from, there's several different things, and I've heard stories about people that have gone, I live in Georgia, it doesn't get that hot. I mean, it gets hot, but we're surrounded by shade trees. We have the forest canopy. We have creeks. We have streams. If things get real bad, you can either get under a tree, get in the shade, get out of the sun, or you can get into the water, possibly, if you have to. Immerse yourself in water. But now I have heard stories before of people in places like Arizona and Nevada and some of those places near, like, I don't know, maybe Death Valley, Grand Canyon, some of those canyons over there that have national parks in them. I have heard so many stories, I have read stories year after year after year of these amateur hikers that'll go in with no water. And that is a very bad idea. Places like that carry your water. Now, places like that have more temperate environment, like down south, and especially areas where you have, you know, rivers, creeks, brooks, streams, lakes, you could carry water for purification tablets. You could carry a water filter. You could even carry a pot for boiling water to purify it. But, you know, so that you could drink and cool your body down. So I'm starting to get into the next one, the hydration phase, but all these are interconnected. 2's connected to 3, 3's connected to 4. So I need to stay back on track with the hyperthermia. And there's the old thing that a lot of people will wear less clothing because they want the wind hitting them. Well, a lot of times you're better off wearing a long sleeve shirt. With the new modern polyesters and nylons and synthetics, sometimes you're just better off with long sleeves. Block the sun out. Keep the sun off of you. You don't want to bake in the sun. Hats like this, they don't protect your ears. You have to wear a full brim hat. Protect yourself from the sun. Don't be in the sun very long. Hyperthermia is also connected to the 5th C, hypothalamus, and we're going to go over that too. And there's 2 stages here. There's heat exhaustion, and that's in the 102 to 104 Fahrenheit range, and you can get so hot, your body can get so hot, it'll cause nausea, vomiting, you get a severe headache, and you get muscle cramps. That's heat exhaustion. The more severe is heat stroke, and that begins at 105 Fahrenheit. And with that, that is a medical emergency, and you don't want that to happen to you while you're out in the desert, and there's no cover, no shade, no trees, no water to jump into, no tarp to get under. You get confusion, mental changes, you can get seizures, you can get permanent brain damage, and you can even slip into a coma. And I don't know if I've read any of the medical reports on the people that have died hiking without water in the summer heat, but I'm sure a lot of these things happen. That whenever they find the people dead, they go into a seizure, and it's not a good way to go. So those are the temperature ranges: hypothermia and hyperthermia. Read a little bit more about it and think ahead. Don't go out unprepared. Pay attention to the weather. Those things can really get you. All right. Next one is hydration. And hydration and dehydration go hand in hand. But you don't want to get involved in being dehydrated. You want to worry about hydration. Prevent it before it happens. Don't get yourself into a mess. So that's the 3rd C, hydration. Your body is comprised mostly of water. And there is a proper balance between water and electrolytes. And what electrolytes are is the electrolytes are contained in your bloodstream, and they're like potassium, magnesium, calcium, and sodium, and they're what makes your body function, and they're what makes your heart have its rhythm, and it's what makes your blood pressure work like it should. And every cell, every tissue and organ in your body needs it to work properly. And hydration maintains body temperature, it helps to remove waste, it helps to lubricate your joints. And the electrolytes is the important part of it. And that is going to lead into, electrolytes are directly tied into number 4. So I'm trying not to tie these in too much together. But with the hydration, it goes along the lines with, back up to number 2, they're all tied in together, the H's are, with hyperthermia, going out in the desert with no water. Carry water with you. Everywhere you go, when you're hiking, if you're going out in the woods anywhere, carry something. Carry some kind of a canteen of some kind. Carry water. Don't always depend on it being there. And like I said, you know, heaven forbid you ever do get lost or get into a survival situation, water's important. You've got to have water. You could go for like, I think they claim 30 days without food and you won't die, but that all depends on what you weigh before you go in. But water, 3 days without water and you're dead. And honestly, 24 hours without water, you're going to have such a bad headache and not be able to move around so much and have so many muscle cramps and twitches, and you're not going to be able to go on very long after 24 hours. They say 3 days, but 24 hours of no water, you're really going to be feeling bad. And like they say, you can tell when you're dehydrated. Several things. One thing is you grab your skin and you pull it up and it snaps back. Well, it's got its elasticity. Your organs, your tissues, they've retained their water. But if you pull it up, let go, and it takes a minute for it to soak back down, you're in trouble, because you're losing the elasticity of your tissues. When you're dehydrated, you have very little urine to dark urine. You have a very dry mouth. You're very fatigued. You have extreme thirst. You've definitely got a headache. Confusion, dizziness, lightheadedness. If you're upset about being lost and you try to cry, you have no tears. You can start vomiting, even though you don't have fluids in you. You can dry heave what's left of you. You can have diarrhea. How? I don't know, but they say that's one of being dehydration. You can get overheated, which is hyperthermia, number 2. So it's very, very extremely important. Now, here's the thing. Wait a minute. Look at that. I was just fixing to get into number 4. I was fixing to say something about electrolytes, because electrolytes are tied to hydration. So, something you want to think about. Read about the effects of hydration and what it does to you, and how it can lead to hyperthermia. Even in the wintertime, you can get dehydrated. Dehydration is not a good thing. It can cause kidney failure. It can cause liver failure, all organ failure. It causes all your electrolytes to drop, which makes your heart not pump right. So I could go on and on and on, but I suggest you read about it. And just because you got a water filter and water for purification tablets, or you brought a pot, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to wind up with water. Think ahead. Use your head. Sometimes you have to bring your water. Alright? So this is tied directly into number 4. So let's get into that. Number 4, one that you may not have heard of. It's called hyponatremia. Alright? Now what hyponatremia is it's when your blood sodium is low. And there could be various reasons for that. Now, sodium is an electrolyte that helps regulate the amount of water in and around your tissues. And your body's water levels, when your body's water levels rise, it can cause swelling when your electrolytes are low. Okay. Now, this is something interesting to pay attention to that a lot of people don't know about hyponatremia. let's say that you're in an area where you're under the conditions of either hyperthermia or dehydration, and you're like, I'm going to drink a lot of water. Well, if you drink too much water, or if you're in a starvation situation and you drink too much water, it literally washes away your electrolytes, and it screws up your potassium levels, your calcium levels, your magnesium levels, your sodium levels, which in turn makes heart palpitations. I think it's called heart rhythms or something. I can't pronounce it, but it totally screws up everything in your body because you're out of balance. Your electrolytes have to be in balance. All right? So here's the thing about that. In certain situations, and this is where a lot more studying about hyponatremia comes in, you have to kind of study on this, and you have to be prepared in some cases if you're going to drink a lot of water. You could either bring powdered Gatorade, or you could bring these little pre-packaged tablets that they call electrolyte tabs or salt tabs. Keep them in your first aid kit. Sweating like a pig and drinking tons of water can do it. Like if you're in a desert type area, or for example, another biggie is if you're in a jungle, tropical type environment where it's very humid and you're sweating like a pig and you're drinking about 2 gallons of water a day. That pure water, it's hydrating you. Yes, there's a difference. Yes, it's hydrating you without a doubt. But you're flushing away your electrolytes. Now, there's kind of been a small discussion in the survival community about this, that when you overhydrate and you wash away your electrolytes, and it is a survival situation, and you don't have your backpack full of gear, how do you replenish them? All right. Well, old Dave, the only thing I know of in nature that can actually replenish your electrolytes is watermelon juice or coconut juice. They contain electrolytes. They'll put back into your bloodstream what you need. There was a debate years ago, and nobody has really agreed on it, and you can't get science to study it, that if you were near an ocean, you could drink, there was a percentage of salt water you could drink compared to regular water. But then some scientists and medical professions were saying that when you drink salt water, it dehydrates you further. But there's a fine line you need to figure out in there somewhere. How much fresh water do you need to drink to stay hydrated? And at what point are you flushing away your electrolytes? You know, at what point do you need to replenish that salt? And will salt from salt water do it? Or do you need other electrolytes? You know, such as what you find in Gatorade or Powerade or watermelon juice or coconut water. So that takes a lot of, there's a lot of study in there. So you know, try to limit tons of water. Once again, here I'll read the symptoms real quick. Nausea, vomiting, headache, confusion, loss of energy, drowsiness, fatigue, restlessness, muscle weakness, spasms, cramps, and once again, seizures and coma. So, something else to pay attention to there. Hyponatremia, and it is directly tied to hydration, and the hydration is directly tied to the hyperthermia. Hence the 5 H's of survival. So, moving along to the 5th H. Now, the 5th H of survival is hypothalamus. Right? Hypothalamus, I'm fixing to read. I've got a few notes here. But before I read the notes, I'm going to tell you basically. Now, I'm going to tell you the notes first, and then I'm going to tell you my description of the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, first off, it's a part of your brain. It's a section in your brain, right? And getting in and out of a survival situation, you depend on your brain more than anything. And your level of, not necessarily consciousness, but how calm you are. So, hypothalamus is responsible for the regulation of the metabolic processes and the autonomic nervous system by producing and releasing inhibiting hormones. It controls your body temperature, your hunger, your appetite. Okay? Now, what it is, the hypothalamus is set in your brain. And let me try to give you an example so that you can think about this, because this is what you got to expect of your own body if you get into a survival situation. If you sleep 5 hours a day, that's the sleep your body is used to. That's how your hypothalamus is set. If you're like Albert Einstein and you sleep 12 hours a day, that's how your hypothalamus is set towards that. If you eat one big giant meal a day, every day, that's how your hypothalamus is set. Some people eat 4 or 5 little tiny meals throughout the day. That sets the hypothalamus. And what that is that's your body cycle. That's how that's how your brain is set. And that's what it knows. And it's like your body goes into a storage mode of calories if you eat one meal a day, because it knows every day at the same time you're going to get that one meal. Your body's going to constantly burn calories if you've trained your body to eat 4 or 5 little bitty tiny snacks throughout the day. It's set. Are you in a constant state of dehydration, or do you drink water all day long? Do you drink coffee all day long? Are you addicted to caffeine? Do you smoke? Are you addicted to nicotine? Do you live in Nevada? Is it constantly 100 degrees and dry? Do you live in Alaska? Is it very cold all the time? Your body's hypothalamus is set towards the temperature you're used to, what you're acclimated to. It's set towards your sleep patterns, towards your eating patterns. And any disruption in these things, you have to expect and you have to know how to deal with it. Now, the reason this is brought up is because there are things that can happen that can permanently reset your hypothalamus. Like, for example, let's say I work, okay, and I'm working in the shop, and in the summertime that shop's 90, 95, 100 degrees, okay. I work in the shop, break time, I go into the air-conditioned break rooms. Not that big of a deal, okay. In and out, I'm used to it. Constantly reacclimating myself. But if I ever get into a situation to where I experience heat exhaustion, that is a permanent reset of my hypothalamus. And every day for the rest of my life, I can't handle the heat anymore. The heat affects me even worse. And that is a reset of it. And it's fascinating. I'm not in the medical profession, so I can't explain it that good, but that's about the easiest way I can explain it. But the more you understand about it, the more you can deal with it if you get into a situation to where you're stuck out in the wilderness and there's no food and you're not getting enough sleep and there's no coffee, you don't have any caffeine, you don't have any nicotine. When you understand these things about your body and you know what to expect and you keep a upbeat attitude about it and you tell yourself this is temporary, you're going to be better. You're going to be okay. So, the attachment behaviors can be thirst, fatigue, sleepiness. Circadian rhythms will be screwed up. That's something worth looking up too. It's got a lot to do with it. The circadian rhythms, your blood pressure, your heart rate, the different cycles of your heart, your fluid and your electrolyte balance can become imbalanced, and see that's tied to hyponatremia too. Glandular secretions of the stomach and the intestines. Somehow or another that's tied to the hypothalamus right there. So anyway, I hope these things are useful. If you can study up more on them, the more you'll learn about your body. You know gear, okay? You understand ferro rods, you understand clothing, you understand how to make a fire, you understand how to chop with an axe or a machete. Now it's time you study up on your body. And the more you know about your body, the more prepared you'll be if you ever get into a survival situation, which hopefully you won't. A survival situation in the wilderness is something you prepare for, you plan for, you prepare for, you study for your entire life, but you never hope to be in one. So that is the 5 H's of survival. All right. I've given you your start on it. I want you to study a lot more on it. Now, I thought about adding about survival kits into this video, but I don't want this video to be so long that it doesn't get widespread views, because people don't talk about this stuff, and I'd like for more people to see this stuff and learn about it and study up on it. I myself am a camper, hiker, bushcrafter kind of guy, but I know survival and I've studied survival. I don't want to be a survivalist because it's not fun, but the more I can share about these things and the more prepared you can be, the better off you'll all be. Now, as you can see on this table right here, all this junk right here, this is all survival kits. And all of this stuff I'm going to go over in the next video. So, because there's a very fine line in a survival kit being so small that it's ineffective. And then there's another fine line that if a survival kit is too big, you're going to be like, I don't want to carry that. That's too much weight. Like I said, if you're going to leave the main camp and go out for a day hike, or if you want to go scouting around, I want to find a lake or a creek away from camp, or just leave your truck where you're not even camping, and I want to do this and I want to do that, that's when these unplanned, unexpected events happen, and you need to be prepared for them. And that's when a survival kit needs to be small enough and not be so cumbersome that you don't want to carry it. So heavy, so bulky, such a pain to carry, you don't want to carry it. But big enough to be effective. And that's what we're going to go over in the next video. I got all kinds of ideas here for things that you can carry, whether you're just day hiking or whether you're camping. So, in the meantime, study up on the 5 H's of survival, and learn these things. The more you learn about your body, the better off you'll be. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. And remember, survival kit's in the next one. Hope you enjoy it then. And we shall see you then.